Hey, how are you? Good. Same. Oh, good. I'm glad you got it. Yeah, so in our one-on-one, I wanted to talk through this expectations alignment guide. But before we did, I wanted to talk about why I sent you this, and we'll walk through it. So recently, I was in this webinar. Like, I'll find and sign up for different webinars for leadership development and all that. And they were talking about expectations at work and if you know what's really expected of you. I sat through it and thought to myself, I think I know, but I don't. And they said, both as managers, do you know that? But also, does your team know that? And they sent this example template. And then they said, as you go through this with your team members, you should tell them why you're going through it. And you can tell them because it's really important that people know expectations, and rarely do people hear expectations at work. Or they said, you can say, you were at this webinar and someone said you should really go through this with your team members. And so it is important for me to make sure that, I need to know what's expected of me, but you need to know exactly what's expected of you, but by me and others. But also, I don't want to hide the ball. I all the time am trying to develop, and we'll talk about this as one of the points. And so sometimes that's just hearing something on a webinar. And so I wanted to have the conversation, and we'll go through this together, but that's the why. Yeah. So this is just like 6 different points, and we can talk about what's expected and talk through it together, and both how you'll do it and then what you'll get from me and others as support. And we can go back and go through this at any time. And, I know you've been in seat for a bit, and so I wish I had this on day one, but like people say all the time, the best time to do things was like back then. The second best is right now. So we'll go through it. So the first is on workload and priorities. And so just thinking about, do you really know what your responsibilities are and what actually matters most? And you'll see, this is like a 1-page document. Like, this can feel really simple, but sometimes I like to think, I'd love to know everything that you're working on and doing, but sometimes I may not know that. And so I also may think that you know what to do when. So just wanted to talk through those as well. Yeah, right. So for customer success, so right now we're focused, like, we'll go back and forth on retaining customers and also expanding those as well. And so so your focus right now is on retaining customers. And so talking to those customers and getting a sense of how they're using it, looking at data. So yeah. Okay. So you can go through it. And what I was thinking we could do is we can go through this and then come back as well together. I wanted to give the context behind it, and we can talk through each of these. And for each of us, again, this is what's expected of you so that it's clear, but also that you're not on an island. So what kind of support you'll get, whether it's from me or from other team members, people on other teams. And so we can absolutely talk through that. So the next is the results and accountability. And accountability, one of the things they said on this webinar is often accountability is like a bad word. You hear that, like, who are we going to hold accountable? Like, it's a bad thing. But accountability is also, can we count on each other? And just sometimes that's literally knowing what's expected of you. And so from quality and timeliness and follow through, like, what's expected specifically. And so what does that mean? In thinking about it as well, from like customer success, like not just what's expected of it from me or from, our leaders, our senior leaders and all of that, but also thinking about it from the customer's perspective. You are the whole company at times to some of our customers. You are like a 1-person marketing team. Then you're not, because you have plenty of support, but thinking about that results in accountability, not just from what we expect, but thinking about it from customers, and what that means and how you can do it. And so filling it out there as well. Yeah, so we can both fill it out and put it together, but then the next is decision making and asking for help. So I was once in a role, because this is all about like what you can decide on your own and when to ask for help. And so some of that's like, what do you have authority for, or what's expected that you can do on your own. But that also doesn't mean you can never ask for help for those, but a sense of what you have, like permission and what's expected of you to be able to do. But I used to have a role where I could sign certain things but not others. But it was totally unclear to me of like whether I was supposed to sign it or not, whether I was bothering someone by asking who could sign those. I mean, it sounds really simple, but so when I was looking through this in particular, it literally is knowing like what do you have sometimes authority for and what to ask for help on, like what you really have to ask for help on. And again, you're welcome to do that anyway, as anyone is. But thinking about that, and so we'll spell out what that looks like. And again, I think it'll be helpful for us to both fill this out and put it together, because we'll likely have different ideas. The next is communication and response times. And so thinking about clearly and within agreed upon timeframes. I know sometimes it can feel like a race to reply first. And sometimes there's, maybe a mass email, and you look at it and it's like the whole chain happens like before you've even had a chance to look at the first email. And we're really, really trying to move away from feeling like it's a response first environment. Like that's one thing as an organization we're working on. And so looking at timeframes, like that doesn't mean that we don't want to respond to each other, but it means that it's important to think through the responses and not just like this expectation of like, I haven't heard from this person. It's been 30 minutes. Like that's too short. And so thinking about what those timeframes look like, whether it's internal, whether it's external clients, what that looks like after hours. Like I actually think that that's really helpful, because I know we've talked in our team about when we take vacation, how we fill in for each other, what are expectations when we're working with customers. There are some customers that really, they want that instantaneous response. Sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not. So how do we think about that? So that's why I think it will be helpful to, we'll work on this and come back together. But that's what we can talk about the expectations on. And again, what support you can get from me and others as well, including backup if you have a customer, for example, that wants a response before we can really give a substantive one. Also working with others. So thinking about our team success, organization success, what that looks like. What do expectations look like for your role? So some of that is, the basics of how we work together collaboratively, but also sometimes, we have different team members in the same role, but it can feel at times like the concept of like parallel play with toddlers, but like you're all kind of doing the same thing on your own. But so how do we get people together to share those ideas and also show that it's helpful? So you're not just going to give someone an idea and then they're going to take it and run with it and get credit. That's not what we want, but thinking about what that really means, both within our team and with other teams. And so specifically, we'll walk through that. And finally, learning and development. So this is a sense of growth. This does not mean there's like one size path fits all. I want to work and be in my role, and so it is appealing to others to want to move into management, but there's maybe you don't want to be a manager, and that's okay. So some of this is understanding what that looks like. So some of the support is from me and others to give an idea of what growth and development can look like without having to apply for a new role necessarily. Like maybe that's a training session. Maybe that is just speaking up in a team meeting and going to webinars like I talked about. And so all of those things about what's expected. So we have this, and so we can, again, so what I'm doing for each team member is I'm going through and writing out how I see things, but also I want to see it how you do. And then we can come back together and have this. And I'm going to put this in calendar notes in, like, I think quarterly on this expectations alignment guide. And we can always adjust that if it feels like too close together or too far apart. But to go through this, because as a manager, there are things I can't control. And I try to do my best to be clear about that. But communication is something I can. And it's really important that people know what's expected of them. And it was sitting through this webinar that made me realize that's something that not enough people have at work. And we may come through some of these, you may not have known what's expected of you. And so again, I can't change what's happened, but I do want to change what we can do moving forward. So we'll go through this. We'll come together in the one-on-one. If you have questions as we go along, feel free to note those and send a note. But this is, again, a simple tool, but sometimes the most helpful tools are the ones that are used. So we'll start with this one pager and go from there. Awesome. Sounds great. And if this tool is something that would be helpful for you and your team members, make sure that you get the Manager Method Minute newsletter, because every week we send an email with a blog and this longer video in it, and provide often tools that can help your team. As we work with organizations, we have even more robust tools. So every month, for example, we send managers or HR leaders tools for their managers that they can use, including simple tools. And so next month, we'll not only be sending this tool, but also talking points for managers to have these conversations with their team members. So that's what we do when we actually work with organizations. But we'll go ahead and give this to help you set those expectations for your team members. So this can work no matter what your industry, no matter what their experience. Because truly, the most effective tool is one that's used. So hopefully this is helpful.